People are so focused on what they're going to do about peeing that they're totally ignoring this. Marvel just announced the Avengers Endgame runtime and tickets are going on sale. I'm interested in how the runtime is going to affect box office revenues. Hi, I'm Craig and welcome to Market Power, where we look at the power of markets and economics to shape our world. Avengers Endgame is going to be 3 hours and 2 minutes long. Critics are wondering, how is this going to affect people showing up at the movie theater, which of course is going to affect the revenues. The biggest question seems to be whether an audience is willing to sit through a 3-hour-long movie. Are they going to go that long without eating? What if they need to pee? My first question is whether there is a relationship between the runtime of a movie and the revenue it receives. So I collected data from the numbers and I looked at the relationship between box office revenue and runtime. And it actually looks like there's a bit of a positive relationship. It does look like longer movies make more money in the domestic box office. What about in the international box office? Are international audiences willing to sit through long movies too? It looks like that same relationship persists. This isn't all that surprising. Movies that know that there's going to be a high demand also know that they can have their movies longer. People are just going to come see them anyway. It's the same reason why you see popular YouTubers able to make 15-minute videos, and I try to keep mine as short as possible. People aren't ready to sit around that long to listen to me yet. The focus on the audience is about demand, but we as economists care not just about demand, but also about supply. People are so focused on what they're going to do about peeing that they're totally ignoring this. A 3-hour runtime makes a big difference for supply. Infinity War was 2.5 hours long, which means on a good day you could probably fit a whole 5 showings in there. With that extra 30-minute runtime, Avengers Endgame might only have 4 showings in a day. That's a 20% drop in supply, which means even if demand is high, that's probably going to affect revenues. Can demand compensate for the cut in supply? The best source of comparison is probably the Lord of the Rings movies. The first 2 Lord of the Rings movies were 3 hours long. And then the third one, Return of the King, increased it by another 20 minutes. So we're facing a similar issue here. But if we look at the revenues against the runtimes for these movies, we see that the revenues were increasing with each film. Now, it would be nice to see what Return of the King would have been like if it had only been 180 minutes long, but it looks like demand was strong enough to compensate for that cut in supply. What can we say about Avengers in this case? Well, if we compare the Avengers runtimes and revenues with Lord of the Rings, it's actually much shorter for the Avengers movies, and they get a ton more revenue. So it seems safe to say that the demand for Avengers Endgame, which is the most anticipated movie of 2019, is probably going to compensate for that extra 30 minutes. Another question is how many theaters are actually going to bring in the movie. Of course, demand is high and theaters want it, but because Marvel and Disney know it's in such high demand, they might try to squeeze the theaters. In fact, this is what they did with The Last Jedi. They forced theaters who took the movie to have the movie for 4 weeks. And for some theaters, that's just too long to hold on to a movie. And for a movie that's 3 hours long, that might make it just totally unattractive to hold the movie in the first place. So again, you're going to have a little bit of shock to supply. But nevertheless, I think that demand is probably high enough so that way it's going to compensate for that restriction of supply. In the comments below, put your predictions for how much money Avengers Endgame is going to make. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Market Power.